Hey, welcome everyone. It looks like a few of you have already joined, which is great. We're going to give people several minutes just to get into the meeting room. And once a few minutes have passed, we'll go ahead and get started. In the meantime, if you didn't get a chance to ask questions via the Google link, you can certainly drop questions in the chat box. So if you want to take some time now and drop some questions in the chat box, that is great. And in the meantime, we'll wait for attendees to join, and feel free to ask any other questions as well.
Good to see everyone. Cody, excited to see you. Hey,
Yes.
Ginny.
Jonathan.
How's it going?
Hey, guys.
Hey, Nick. Good to see you.
Oh, man. It's way good to see you.
This is
Bella, you
great.
have like the coolest name. Bella Applegate. That sounds like we need to
Bella
roll out the red
Applegate.
carpet and everything.
I would agree.
Hey, welcome everyone. If you just joined, we are giving people just a few minutes to get logged on and join us here. And once a few more people have joined, we'll go ahead and get started. But in the meantime, if you would like to drop any questions into the chat box, you can certainly do so. If you didn't already submit to the Google form, I see a couple more questions are rolling in through the Google form. So either is fine. The chat box or that form is great. And we'll get started here in just a few minutes.
And while we're waiting, I would love to know what has everyone join in this call today. Like if you've got a cool business idea, something you're pursuing or really passionate about, drop that in a chat or come off mute before we get started. I'm happy to see if we can tailor this to you as well.
Yeah, I love that, Nick. Because, I mean, obviously, people have their questions, or some are just interested in entrepreneurship, but, you may just have some ideas that you want to float past the group.
Yeah, heck yeah. Or you saw Shark Tank and you're like, I could do that better.
I could do that. That little octopus thing that just wraps around everything.
Oh yeah,
It's pretty cool.
the gorilla pods or whatever. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that was on Shark Tank. I forgot about
It
that.
was on Shark Tank.
Man, we got one. I just got it for my son, and all it is this like it's a whiteboard booklet with sea creatures on it in this carrier. Like it looks like a trapper keeper or a folder, and it's got a little stretchy string with whiteboard markers. It couldn't have cost more than like $1 to manufacture, and I paid $28 for it, and I would do it 10 times over with the amount of time my son spends on it. Like that was a Shark Tank product.
Something about that just made me think, what if we took like the trapper keeper concept, but then matched it up with like the sea monkey concept of like growing your own sea monkeys, and they could be in the trapper keeper and you could take your sea monkeys with you. I'm just saying, ideas just
It looks like quite a few more people have joined, which is awesome. And I think we can go ahead and jump into our webinar for this evening. So I'm going to give both of our presenters, Nick and Carrie, a minute or two to introduce themselves. And then Paul is going to join us. He'll be here a bit later on. He had something come up, but he will be joining us in just a bit. And this webinar is being recorded. So if you want to access it later, we will email out the recording to you all. And again, to ask questions, feel free to drop those in the chat box or submit those to the Google form that was sent out earlier. So thank you all for being with us. My name is Luke Shamer. I'm the Director of Education at Delta Sigma Pi, and I'm so happy to have all of you with us. And a big thanks to our hosts this evening, Nick and Carrie. And then in just a bit, Paul will be joining us as well. So I will pass it over to Carrie if you want to introduce yourself, and then pass it off to Nick.
Sure, that'd be great. Hi, guys. Carrie Burns. I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia. I was a previously Southern PVP, and I miss being involved, but I'm still kind of behind the scenes. I need to get back into the fray, but this is a great way to do it. From an entrepreneurship background, my father was an entrepreneur. I always loved the idea of that. And I stayed with the family business coming out of college. So I attended Mercer University here in Georgia, and I stayed on with the family business until I started my own business, which was creative websites. I had started that during college. I was designing websites, and if you do the math, it was when websites were pretty much just getting started, especially for small businesses. And I would do a lot of friends' websites, and honestly, realtor websites were a thing at that time to get the word out more. And creative websites grew. I worked a lot on it coming out of college. Later, I met my husband, and he was a developer. And I was able to work with him to expand that business into more of a development side of websites and email marketing automation. We still have that going at that business. While I quit the family business, I also then went through a period with creative websites where we fired our largest client, and have gone from, the highs and the lows of a lot of things involving growing and building a business. But then I ended up, because of the neighborhood I live in Atlanta, and because of the rise of filming in Georgia, I ended up being incredibly passionate about film tourism and fans being driven to cities around the world where their favorite movies and TV shows were filmed. And I started a company called Atlanta Movie Tours here. We grew that to just shy of a six-figure business based on our love of The Walking Dead, Stranger Things, and then Marvel came into the picture in Georgia. And that was an incredible passion of mine that did not survive COVID. My sister, who I had brought into that business, went on to also start her own business. She is now a baker. And I am working on my side gig, which is Destination Fandom, which is essentially bringing the same concept of Atlanta Movie Tours to people through storytelling, but on their own. So I'm using a lot of AI, I'm using a lot of development, but a lot of technology to help drive that with people behind it. In the interim of that, I actually did start working for a company called Arrival. They are focused on events and research for the tourism industry. So the amazing thing about this job, this was the last conference I attended as a tour operator in October of 2019. And because of it, I am also surrounded by entrepreneurs and business leaders and startups and incredibly passionate storytellers in tourism around the world. And I get the privilege of interacting with them on a regular basis. So it's an amazing thing to find a passion that you're driven towards. And that's why I love that I get to answer some questions and tell that story.
Awesome.
Nick?
Thanks so much, Gary. Yeah, Nick.
Okay, my story's not nearly as cool because it doesn't involve Walking Dead, but I love Carrie, what you got going on, and you as a person. So my name is Nick Rizzi. I'm the 2014 National Koi and past RVP. Really loved our fraternity and I met my best friend and Big the very first day at the University of Denver, because it was like 98 degrees and there was a bunch of people wearing suits and holding a sign saying, "We'll be your friend." I was like, this is great. Like, I'm from Iowa. I don't have any friends. And that's how I got involved. And so ended up falling in love with the organization and the people that we've got going on. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew that I was put on this earth to run my own business and make an impactful change on people around me through my own business. So growing up, I was very much, if you guys have ever seen the TV show Recess, which depending on what generation you are, you're not going to get this. But there's a show that I grew up on called Recess with a bunch of best friends and Spinelli. And there was this one kid on the playground with like a trench coat. And in every episode, he was like, you want to buy a kazoo? Like that was me growing up. I sold leather engraved wristbands. I sold flashed Xboxes, imported Oakleys, fake Oakleys. I did like a bunch of weird stuff in high school, just trying to figure out where my place was. Graduated college, ended up turning down a bunch of really great, stable job offers in order to take a job paying almost nothing with a startup in technology and hospitality. And I was their first employee, and that was such a ride. After about 3.5 years, we ended up getting acquired, merged with another company, and they got acquired by a company that had gone through Silicon Valley funding, which was pretty cool. So grew that company. We went from 2 to 9 to 550 when I left, and love the company. Can't wait for it to go public, and my stock means even a little more. But in the meantime, I ended up leaving because I realized it was getting very big, and I realized I didn't love tech itself. I loved like the sales and the one-on-one. And my client base in that company were hospitality managers. So front desk people, hotel staff, bed and breakfast. But a lot of my clientele ended up being realtors because they would sell the property and then use our software to manage the property as a vacation rental for their client, because we had integrations to Airbnb and Booking.com and much more. So they would use us to manage. And I ended up seeing that. And most of my clients were in like Florida and California, and just got really excited about real estate as an industry. And when the pandemic hit, I changed jobs in between into another startup that didn't survive the pandemic. And it was a really good chance to try something new. And my partner, who I met through the fraternity actually, but she was like, go do whatever you want, go build something great. So I went out and got my real estate license. I got Rookie of the Year at my brokerage with Keller Williams, sold double the amount that the average agent in Denver does, did double that the next year. And now I'm on a team and looking at what my next step might be, whether that's my own team or anything else. But it's definitely been an experience because I'm an independent contractor. I run my own expenses. I run my own business. I have my own virtual assistant that I employ. And especially if I end up taking that leap and owning my own team, it's just going to scale everything I'm doing from where I'm alone to a much bigger vein. And my experience with like tech and sales have helped a ton with that. So it's an ever growing journey that we're going to continue down, but I'm happy to give you as much help and advice that I learned so far as I can.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. So a couple more people have joined since we started. So I'm going to, again, just give an overview of how we will do this. So if you have questions, you can drop those in the chat box, or there's the Google form, which came through email. And the first question that we have here, and it looks like Paul just joined us as well, which is great. But the first question that we have is, what is one of the most challenging parts about entrepreneurship? And what are some of your skills in overcoming challenges? There are a couple questions here about that. So what's the most challenging part about entrepreneurship, or one of the most challenging parts? And then how do you overcome some of those challenges?
So who's leading off?
I know. I was like,
I'll be the saddest answer. I'll start it so you guys can make me look good. I think the biggest challenge and in that skill set is like, it's hard. It is so hard. Like I can't tell you the amount of times that I have sat down in the middle of my office and just cried because it just, everything's happening at once. And there's 10 million things that are pulling your attention and you're overwhelmed. And then like you get that sale, or you make this big decision and you grow your business, and like every inch and ounce is worth it. So, I mean, in terms of the challenge and the skill, resiliency, I think, is the biggest thing. Like, so many entrepreneurs that we look up to make everything look easy, but like, I'd really encourage you to go watch the Croc movie, Meta movie. Like, they really do dive in to like, these were real people with real challenges or real difficulties. And I think that was kind of the biggest surprise and best skill that I got out of this, is like the ability to just get crapped on, to be honest, sometimes, and then just have your moment, and then you stand up and you go get the job done. Like, when you are doing this, when you're an entrepreneur and you're your own boss, like, that's it. You're a boss. Like, you don't stay down. People can't keep you down. It's just hard. And then you shake it off and get up and get the job done.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah. I would say, for me, I would say discipline and balance. And I don't necessarily mean this whole thing about work-life balance. I just mean balance in yourself. I mean, I struggled with that a lot. And to Nick's point, that really is something when you're the boss and everything's riding on you, because you don't know what you don't know. And I don't care how many advisors you go to. I don't care how many people you have around you in your circle, which I suggest having a lot of people who you trust their opinions on, to be brutally honest with you if you're, not disciplined and not really staying true to what you were doing or what your intent was. And the discipline part really comes into, I hate to say it, but the majority of people on the call are involved in business in one way or the other, but good project management will help you through a lot of that if you set things up and you have the right tools that you're working with. So that was a big driver in all of the companies that I've been involved in, whether my own or others, is to, really try and set up those productivity tools to use them to your advantage. And the balance part of it, I know a lot of people today, and, I still get a lot of people who don't believe in meditation, but I am on a 3-year streak of daily meditations of at least 3 minutes. And I can take 3 minutes and do nothing more than breathe. And it really does an amazing thing for me, because I'm also, like a lot of people on this call, and certainly my 2 co-hosts, we're also very servant leader types of people. So we volunteer in a lot of organizations. And if you would like to do that, then you've got to find a way to balance and center yourself. So yeah, that's.
So someone who's a big believer in John Wick. They always say about John Wick, he is a man of focus. Well, I say that for a man or a woman, because let me tell you about today. So as you see, I was a little bit late today. You do not want to know the speeds I did going through Arlington to get home after my Rotary Club meeting tonight. But yes, repping the Rotary. But long story short, got up and basically went straight to work today. 6 strategy sessions. Each of those strategy sessions was worth a minimum $4,000, if not $8,000. We got 2 deals out of it already. We're closing in. That's how we got the day going. Then I made time to work out. So for those that don't know me, I've got a workout streak that's over 3.5 years. I made time. I didn't have time. I made time. Then I had to do a couple of phone calls. Then at that point, I had to leave, grab an early dinner, go to the bank, and then go to Rotary, because initially I was going to be here at the start of this meeting tonight, but my Rotary Club president over the weekend said, Paul, I'm stuck in this audit. I need you to run the meeting. You're a past president of the club. You're the only one I trust to do this. And I said, okay. I got a hold of Luke. Said, Luke, I'm going to have a little curveball here, but I'm going to be there at 7:55 at the latest. Well, I got here at 7:40 because, again, we broke a few laws. Police don't even know. But long story short, you make time. You have to be focused. You have to set timers. Carrie, you talked about technology. You and I have talked about some meditation apps over the years. But my best friend is the Notes app on my phone, where that is my entire day. My week is planned out. My days are planned out. Timers are planned out. I'm also a huge believer in the Pomodoro method. If you're familiar with that, I talk about that in my Entrepreneurship book, where you have to set timers and you have to be a person of focus. What that means is you shut off the outside world. You shut off social media, you shut off your phone, you shut off your Wi-Fi, where you just zero in and focus at the task of hand. And that's why I can get an 18-hour day done now in 4 hours. But the reason is by being someone of focus. So then when the philanthropy kicks in, when I've got the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, who I brought in as our speaker tonight for Rotary, made sure he was taken care of, made sure the meeting was taken care of, made sure Rotary was done. And then at Delta Sigma Pi was done right after that. You have to make time. You have to be focused. And most importantly, you have to organize your day. Carrie, you talked about processing. You talked about having these things taken care of. But I think the biggest part of that too is you have to have focus, because if you don't have focus, you don't have balance. If you don't have the discipline, then you can't have any of those pieces. So all of these things that we've talked about does connect. And when Nick talked about crying a lot, exactly, crying's a big part of this, especially when you're in startup. You cry less when you go to scale up, which fortunately where I've been at the last couple of years. But there's a lot of things that you have to do starting out. And especially when you're in a tough industry like real estate or being a financial advisor, it's dog eat dog out there. It's really tough. My field in book publishing is a little less competitive, thank goodness. But you still have to find your niche and your balance. And Carrie, I know with you, with Atlanta Movie Tours and all the great things that you guys were doing over there, I mean, there's always going to be competition. There's always going to be people out there. And it's just really separating yourself from the pack. And how do you do that? By being the person who you are, having the core values, but most importantly, having the follow-up and the consistency. And that's the other thing too, when you have clients. I promise a response to my clients in 24 hours via email, no matter what. And that's why we've had 130 plus launches on Amazon, where we've taken our clients to bestseller, because we do exactly what we're gonna do. And that aligns with our core values, which aligns with focus, with balance, and with discipline.
I
Awesome.
will say one quick point to that. I literally have a post-it note on my monitor that says focus. I have a few of them, but one of them is focus. So excellent.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Carrie. Thanks, Nick. There's a really specific question here in the Google form, and I think it's a good one. The question is, did you have any startup costs for any of your businesses? And if so, did you finance any of those startup costs? So
I'll about lead off on this one, since it went last, and that will kind of balance things out. There you go. There's that balance word again, Carrie. But a lot of us talk about bootstraps, to start at your business. But I'll tell you what I did. And that was, I liquidated my teacher retirement fund, which was right around $30,000, because when I built the business to the point where I was working full time still, I was still teaching my last 3 years, but now I was coaching my clients at nights. And then with that, then it's just trying to build the business to the point where you have enough FU money. And I don't mean anything bad, I mean forget you money, where you've got the FU money where you can build it to here that you're making just as much that you were with your full-time job. But what I did in that situation was, when I left teaching in June of 2017, I had that extra 30 grand as backup. And I'll tell you this, we started with a coaching plan. And what I realized was it really wasn't working. So we get a year into this, I'm almost out of money. And I started listening to people saying, Paul, we don't want you to coach us. We want you to do it we want you to do this for us. So we want you to have a publishing service and a marketing service, and we want to pay you a premium to do it. And the minute we made that switch, and thank goodness we did, because we almost went under. When we did that going in the end of 18, started 19, then that's when everything clicked. That's when we started in 6 figures and multi-6 figures, and everything was going in the right direction. But the other part of that is you have to listen to your audience, and you really have to take their feedback. There's a great book, Sheryl Sandberg, called Lean In. You really have to lean into the opportunities and listen. There's 2 types of people that wait to talk and people that listen. And if you're going to be a person that listens, then you're going to be successful. If you're not afraid to pivot, you're going to be successful. But if you stay on the street, and if you stay on a certain path and it's not working, make changes. Because if you don't, I mean, we know 2/3 of businesses do not survive the first year. And now we're working on year 7, going on year 8. It does work, but it takes a lot of effort with that. Mark Cuban said it best. You have to be obsessed with your business, because this isn't an 8 to 5 thing. This is not a punch your time clock, you're doing 40 hours a week. You're doing this 24/7. And if you're not obsessed with your business, you will not be successful.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul.
Nick, did you want to go next, or you want me to?
Whatever you prefer. Ladies first.
Or ladies first. Yes. Yes, we took a lot of money. And I'll say that. So I think I may have misspoken in my intro, but essentially for creative websites, we did not. That was bootstrapped to begin with, and everything since then has been done through the company. But the overhead's very low. Even when we were purchasing equipment, it was it's a different model in that, and we weren't scaling to beat anybody. With Atlanta Movie Tours, that's a different concept, right? This is a tour company. So we started with renting vehicles through local transportation companies. We worked our network, we built our network. We are friends with everybody in the industry here in Atlanta, including the other tour companies. So I think it's really important. I think a lot of people too see competition, but we just see collaboration, and we all grew together. And we put this out for Atlanta Movie Tours with this first Walking Dead tour in January of 2012. And the media response was great for our media tour. We sold out the first tour. We started doing them weekly. And by the end of it, in August of 2020, and I say that because we were still doing private tours through COVID until we got to the point where that wasn't really happening. We were running every day, multiple tours a day, and we could have continued to rent, but the most economical thing was to buy vehicles. And so buses, the types of minibuses, I think most people are familiar with them, but kind of the party bus kind of concept of a 30-passenger mini bus, they're close to $250,000 if you want them nicely furnished, and you need to be able to show video clips and whatnot. So yeah, we financed. We also worked a lot with the city here in Atlanta. I think every city, depending on what business you're looking at starting, every city has economic development offices and small business development centers. Sometimes in the case of Atlanta, they're tied in with Georgia State and the University of Georgia system. So they're tied in with the school system. However, it is meant to be incubator models for small businesses and startups. So again, use it. In a lot of cases, you can get 0 to very small interest loans for things like that. If you're building in the case of us, we were building a storefront in a tax allocation district, which meant we could basically get that money for free and pay it off over X number of years. Again, just use whatever you're looking at doing. Make sure that you're doing your research on what funding's out there, because you don't necessarily have to bootstrap it. Now, it does mean you got to pay it back, but ideally the business will get to the point where that's not the issue. But yeah, definitely a lot of money.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on this, because I really think it comes down to your risk tolerance first and foremost. And like, I'd rather jump out of an airplane before ever taking a loan, which I did. So it's like, part of it is the person. And then my attitude of it too is like, part of it is, where are you? So Paul being able to use his mind to write this book, to build these plans, these coaching plans, and implement that, and Carrie having all of her connections and knowing all of these people, and not necessarily having to know all the answers, but at least knowing who to turn to get one piece of the answer. That's a much easier pitch for taking on funding and taking on financing than, I've got a good idea and I know your idea is a great idea. Like, I know it's a great idea. There's just so many other components to it. So it's kind of an interesting piece too, because real estate in general, for like the money that you can make here, the barrier for entry is incredibly low. It's like $2,000 to $5,000 to get started, and you can clear 6 figures your first year. It's a ton of grinding, and absolutely you're not going to be on the phone 15 hours a day, but it's very possible. Like, it's just a low barrier for entry for getting started. So Some of my smaller businesses, I did take on small funding, mostly from like the Small Business Association, who was passing out things for students or young professionals. So I did, and that was to like build inventory when I knew there was a demand. But I always referred back to like Shark Tank. The first question that they ask is like, how much of your time and money have you put in, and how many have you sold? So I never wanted to take on more until I like was able to pre-sell things. That's how I won a startup weekend. We pre-sold like 7 orders. It was about $17,000 worth. We just didn't tell them the product didn't exist, but had credit card numbers and everything. So it was like, that's how we like really started with stuff like that. For real estate though, like my attitude too is that now I'm at a point where my relationships and my sales skills I know I can rely on that to bring in income. If I want to expand and do more transactions, I will absolutely invest test money in. And so my rule of thumb is like, whatever the cost is, I have to be able to do it for 6 to 10 months. It's not worth it if I can only fund it for 2 months, 3 months. So if I can do 6 to 10 months, and with whatever the cost is, even if I make $0 out of it and it's a waste of money, like that's that rule of thumb, because then I know if I can get 2, 3, 4 transactions out of $2,000 in video spend per month, that's fantastic. I'll dump 10 grand every day into video spending if I know it's going to result in 3 to 5 transactions for that month. It's just it's a math equation at that point. So I think part of it is like growing and seeing how much you can stretch. I'm going to pull in Ginny. I saw your comment too. Like I would really encourage you guys to get as creative as possible to test and prove your idea. And I think what Ginny posted is a really great, more easily, I'm saying that in quotes, testable idea. Because Ginny, right off the top of my head, like I had clients actually in the Springs too. So connect with me after, because I'll see if I still have relationships with them. But they ran bed and breakfasts or had event spaces or office buildings where they were renting out event spaces on Airbnb. And that's a really cool opportunity to go to them with this plan. And like maybe you do a 1-year agreement where they own the building, they own the space, you give them a percentage of your income, or your revenue is probably better and safer than income. You'll give them a percentage, and they're carrying the risk, they're carrying the leases, they're carrying the utilities costs, but you just go in, see if you can go in on their down season and partner up, make them money. Because then, if you can figure out how to make them money in their down season, that's something you can not only replicate to 10 other buildings, but you can go buy your own building. You've got now the know-how and the proven avenue to take to a bank. Let's get creative.
Awesome. Love that, Nick. And you had mentioned those sales skills before you jumped into Ginny's comment as well. And there was a question from Jonathan, and I think this could be for us all, but Nick, you could kick this off. What sales skill have you learned over the years that has been most useful / impactful for you? So Nick, if you want to kick that one off, and then Carrie and Paul, if you want to jump.
Yeah, the spider rule. They're more scared of you than you should be of them. So that really stuck with me and kind of came out in college. I would go to these events that like the dean is hosting and we're bringing in this company, and they would put all this money and bring in all these incredible people, and like 6 people would show up. And I very quickly realized like that was a really good opportunity to get really great connections. So I started I just said yes to everything. I would go to everything. My Delta Sig chapter, when I was president, we partnered probably on about 150 events, where sometimes we literally just put our name on it and rented the rooms, put out some flyers, and like that was our role, just because the school became reliant on us for helping to get the word out, because we sometimes would bring up to half their attendees. And so I said yes to everything. And then I really got in the habit of just going up to people and introducing myself. I would send personal messages and personal emails to people who would come and speak when there was like 10,000 students in the audience. And I just kept that everywhere I went. One of my things that the company still jokes around about is I would send like the manager of a Hilton equivalent. So there was a hotel chain that was doing like $22 million in revenue, very small, but good chain. And they were like ripe for acquisition by a company like Marriott, and I could not meet the manager. He wouldn't take my call. So at one point it was just like, I'm just going to see how many front desk people I can meet. Oh, hey, Bill, like, good to hear from you again. It's actually Nick. And they laugh because what actually got me in is I just started it. It was just a game at some point. Like, I'm going to talk to this guy one way or another. We'll see if it's a million phone calls or what. But I ended up sending them a card celebrating. It was like PB&J Day. I found a really weird, obscure holiday and just sent everybody a card, but I addressed it to the manager. And then I followed up with like peanut butter donuts, I think is what I sent him. And that was out of my own pocket. Like I'm a compensated by commission. But I did that just because I didn't even care if they bought at this point. Like, that guy was going to talk to me. And that resiliency, that tenacity, like, that's probably the biggest skill that has impacted everything. Like, I have found a way, and it's taken a lot of practice, but like, you don't say no to Nick, and I'm not annoying about it. It's not salesy. It's not bad. Like, I get a ton of referrals from clients because I'm just persistent. Like, I set good expectations and I follow up with them, and it's hard to say no to me. I'm adorable. Come on.
Say no to me. Oh,
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. So Paul or Carrie, do either of you want to jump in on that question? I think it's a good one. Any useful sales skills, or the most useful sales skill you've developed over the years?
Hey, Carrie, you take this one, then I'll back clean up.
All right. Yeah. So, I already said one of the big things was collaboration over competition. Now, competition is great, and we all knew that we were competing. But I think one of the other things is kind of know your audience. And in the case of tourism, so I am driving a little bit more in this tourism space. People who like tours like a lot of tours. Like, they don't usually just go and do one tour. So the idea of collaborating across that was a really big sales component for all of us, where, if somebody who's on a food tour here in the city happens to say, oh my gosh, did you just say Stranger Things? And they're like, oh yeah, if you love Stranger Things, then you need to go take this tour. So that kind of word of mouth is huge. Yeah, you can get it in other ways, but the best way is just work your network, be friends, make the connections that you need to make. And I really think that's been the majority of the success that I've ever seen in the companies that I've started in particular. But really, even working for a rival now, we work our network. I'm not saying you don't go outside of your network for things. You're going to have, obviously, if you're anyone focused in marketing, which I am, you're looking at top of funnel. So you're looking at building an audience, you're looking at building that network. But I do think that you've got to find those champions for you, for your product, for your real estate business, for your book. You need to find that audience, and then really help encourage them in meaningful and intentional ways to share that and be that word of mouth, so that just extends. So that's been, to me, the most successful.
Paul, can I be rude real quick?
No, you can't, but I'll let you go in a minute. No, I'm playing. You go ahead. What up?
I if I could change my answer 100%, like I would say all day long, like what Carrie just said, you need an avatar, and that is your client all day long. Like, I don't sell houses to people. That's not my answer when people ask. I sell houses to first-time home buyers between the ages of 24 and 28, or downsizing couples who are between the ages of 60 and 72 who live in these areas. Like, my avatar is, I have them literally pinned behind my computer at the office, because that is my target market, and 80% of my transactions and referrals come out of those two avatar groups. So yeah, that's a really good point, Carrie. Like, knowing that the people who do one tour are going to do 3 tours is like probably the best business inside knowledge you can get in that company.
All right.
Sorry, all yours, Paul. Yeah.
Thank you. So basically, the way I look at it is this: it is all about getting people to know, like, and trust you. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. My conduit was a book. Started with one book, 21 books later, we still got them going. But then it was helping people in their journey. But the big part of that is this: how do they get to know, like, and trust you? Well, we build a list. And we do this one of two ways. One's through the books, but the others are through different webinars that I do. And Carrie, you mentioned this about partners. So I have a lot of people in the industry that don't do done for you services. They do coaching, they do consulting, or they are literary agents, or they do different things where, yes, we're in the industry, but we're not in competition with each other. And we find ways to collaborate. Now, how do I use that as a Trojan horse? Well, I have virtual conferences that I host every year, 3 of them. And those are a huge driver of revenue for our business. One in terms of sales, but the other part in terms of building our audience and building relationships, where my email list, which is very curated, I basically chop people who are not interested all the time. So my list is just under 9,000. They get a weekly email where I'm being very vulnerable, talk about things that are going on in life, but we're also talking about client successes. But we do this in a way that's not salesy. So it's all content driven. But then at the very end, we have a PS. Whenever you're ready, here are 3 ways that we can help in your journey. The first 2 to set up calls. Third one's to join one of either our Facebook community that's 1,500 people in it, or my LinkedIn following, which has over 10,000. And just having those things at the bottom where it's not salesy. And another big part of this too, we talked about know, like, and trust. So that's the virtual part of it, right? But you also, and I think this is critical for everyone that's paying attention to this could be one of your number 1 takeaways. It can't just be virtual. It cannot be just your website. You have got to get out in the community. And what it started with me was joining the Greater Arlington Chamber of Commerce. Then I was introduced to Rotary. Then I had opportunities to serve on the Greater Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors that I've done the last 2 years. Same thing with River Legacy Foundation. Same thing with our Rotary Club. This all happened because we got involved with the Chamber. And for those familiar with the Marvel Universe, it's like that was Iron Man. Then we moved on to like Captain America, Thor, Black Widow, Black Panther, where all these things opened up and all these opportunities. Now, how does that connect with know, like, and trust? Well, people see that you care. People see that you're out in the community, you're involved in philanthropy. That's how people get to connect. I also mentioned that in the emails to my list, where I have people set up a call going, listen, my dad's a Rotarian, I'm a Rotarian. I see who you are. You've shown us who you are. I would like to talk with you. And a lot of those people end up becoming clients. So a big part of this is not being salesy, not pitching, not having a script. Don't be that person. Know, like, and trust. Show them who you are. Get them to know, like, and trust you. You don't have to do that just with a book. You can do that with a website. You can do that with a lot of different ways. But get people to know you. Get people to show who you are. And then it's not pitching them. You just getting to know them. And then that's when the barriers wear down. And they're going to come to you. They're going to go to Nick and go, Nick, I need help with this real estate deal. Carrie, I need help with this website. Paul, I need help with this book. Or I need help with brand marketing. And those things are going to happen. But the way that you wear down those barriers is for them to know, like, and trust you, getting involved virtually, but also getting involved locally. And Nick, I know you're involved locally as well. Carrie, I know you're involved locally. So these opportunities all help with those sales tactics in a non-salesy way.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul.
Excellent points. Excellent.
I want to get back up to a comment. I think it was the first one we got this evening. It was from Ian, and I want to make sure that we get this one answered. It's a pretty solid question. And Carrie, maybe if you want to start us off for this one, but the question is, what are some things you do when you get stuck? How do you unplug and force yourself to think differently? So thinking outside the box and how you get there.
I actually have a different way of doing this now than I did about 6 weeks ago. But yeah, so you're going to get stuck. And I think one of the things that I love about tourism, and one of the things that really drew me into the fandom side of this and the idea of filming locations and showing that off, is the storytelling aspect. So, you try as hard as you want to tell yourself a different story. You get stuck in this, you get stuck in that kind of pattern a lot of times. And if this is a daily, like a small stick, like you're just kind of a little stuck, then between the meditation and, to Paul's point, the workout, I'll just leave. I'll just literally get up and walk out of the house. I'll just, you go for a walk, you put on your favorite music, you dance. If it's a small step away. And Paul made a great point about turning things off. don't use that time scrolling Instagram for memes. That's not going to unstick you. I got to tell you, it's going to make you laugh, not going to unstick you. A lot of my job as a marketer and in tourism in general is storytelling. Storytelling is, is really reaching and tapping into what makes a great story. How do you influence people through that? And I think that as hard as you try, sometimes you can't necessarily do that. So this is now what I do. I have a new little friend. It's ChatGPT, but we've named him Charlie. And I'll go out there and I'll just start asking questions. I'll just use 5-10 minutes and I'll be like, I have this idea. I can't really muddle through it. Now, I'm using AI in a very human context, right? I'm really using it in ways, and I do use it daily. I use it for a lot of things. But I have found that oftentimes, the stuck that I am, it's not that ChatGPT fixes it for me, but it helps unstick it because it just thinks in a way that I don't think because it's a robot. And we're not, and we're preconditioned with all of these other stories that we tell each other. So I have honestly found that ChatGPT has helped unstick me over the last 6 weeks in a lot of ways, in a lot of different areas of my life. Weird answer, but that's
No. That's a great answer because that's what I tell my clients when they get writer's block, which is very similar to what we go through and we get stuck. ChatGPT. I always recommend disconnect, work out, what we talked about, go outside, have a cappuccino, enjoy nature for a little bit. But if that's still an issue, then ChatGPT, because that does help with writer's block. And that's the same thing with this, because it makes all the difference. But whatever you're doing, stop doing it. Go take a break, get out, take a drive, take a walk, do something, get away from your environment. Because when you are working out, when you're disconnecting, those things can help. But as you mentioned, ChatGPT as well, that does help get unstuck. I've seen it with multiple clients of mine. It does work.
Yeah, and I don't have anything new to add, but I do feel much better knowing that you also talk to a robot, because I just thought I was kind of crazy with that. Because sometimes I'll just type nonsense going back and forth with, I call mine Chuck. Chat Chuck is what I've got. So, but I will say too that like it's important that you unplug. Like I think the best piece that came out of this was what either Paul or Carrie said, but don't get on Instagram, like don't get on TikTok. That's not unplugging. It's designed to keep your brain engaged. You have to do something that you know zones you out. For me, like it's working out, walking the dog, or my kill death streak in Call of Duty is so bad because I can go on autopilot while I'm in there and my brain goes all over the place and I'll get like, oh wait, this is a good idea. And that's when I can go back and take it to Chuck and talk through it. So like you have to walk away from the issue. If you don't build in your breaks, which it feels like you don't get when you're an entrepreneur sometimes, like you have to build them in or you will stay on that problem forever. I get more ideas like in the middle of the night that I have to write down than I do during the day. During the day is just executing. Ideas are for nighttime.
well, and honestly, the nighttime thing, it's something about what you were just saying with the unplugging that I'm getting better and better about is just the idea of, you need sleep. The human body needs sleep, and it sometimes the unstuck can come when you get a really good night's sleep. Like turn everything off, get a good night's sleep. Not saying it's guaranteed, but it's not going to hurt. So, work on that. And I do like that Cody likes our AI names for Chuck and Charlie. My robot vacuum's name is Doug, by the way.
So Carrie, just to add one point on that as well, I think it also goes into routine. And one of the things I do to disconnect, 11 o'clock every night, always putting on the movie. Like right now, putting a lot of Christmas movies. Last night, Home Alone, night before that, Violent Night. But it's one of those things where you get into that routine, but then you end up calling it an evening because that's the only reason I got through today, because I made sure I slept in as late as possible today because I knew I was going to need that sleep of the day ahead. And getting that sleep and getting that, as you talked about earlier, balance makes all the difference, because you have to be able to recharge. Because if you're going to run on 6 hours of sleep a night, God help you, you need at least 7, if not 7.5. Because if you don't get that sleep, you're not going to be able to run your business. You're not going to be able to run your life. You have to make time to sleep. And that's the biggest recurring theme here too. It is about making time to do these things. It is making time to work out. It is making time to get balanced. Don't ever say the excuse that you don't have time to do something. That's a bunch of BS. You make the time. And as long as you're being a focus and you can work very focused and clear on everything, you can make the time to get anything you want accomplished.
Awesome. Thank you all for that. Looks like we have time for maybe another question or two. And there's a good one here, I think, about mentors. And the question is, do you have a mentor? And do you have any advice for finding a good mentor in entrepreneurship or business?
So I'll lead up on this one. And the reason why, your mentors are going to change. So when I got involved in Arlington in the local chamber, I had a mentor, a great guy. He's still a great friend. I love the guy. He's like a big brother. But mentors at different phases of their lives can only take you so far. And what happened was, within a couple of years, I was able to, I don't want to say surpass, but was kind of get to that level. And that's one of the things that you realize in business. It's all about levels. And it's really about leveling up, getting to a certain point. And when that happens, you have to go to another mentor. And last week, I was talking to another person who owns several restaurants in the city, who's been like a mentor, and kind of built that relationship. And another one with our mayor, where there's these different relationships that you build in different points of time. So the same mentor that you're going to have now may not be the same mentor that you have in a few years, because things change, you will evolve, your business will evolve. And you have to realize the mentor you have now may not be the same mentor you have in the future. But seek out people to have that knowledge, because anyone's ever asked me to mentor them, the answer has always been yes. And even if that's for a short period or a longer period, and I've been mentoring people in this fraternity now over 20 years. And Carrie, I know you're in the same boat, and Nick, you as well, at least for the last 5 or 6, that we've all been having those opportunities. But again, it's going to evolve as you evolve and as your business evolves.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Nick, Carrie, anything to add on mentorship or finding a solid mentor?
Yeah, I mean, in real estate, it's thankfully a little bit easier because there's a ton of coaches. Like all the top agents have coaches. I mean, my coach is my largest expense some months. I pay them over $800 a month, and to make sure that I'm like hitting all of my goals and keeping me on track. And I mean, I think Paul's point is probably the biggest. Like a good coach and the way a coach and mentor is designed is like they're supposed to be very good at helping you get past that one thing. Like you should cross over and outgrow them, because then now you need the next step, the next level for your business. So I think they're absolutely necessary in terms of finding them. That's probably the biggest piece. Like for having such a big tech background, I spend a majority of my time doing face-to-face networking, volunteer organizations, including Delta Sig, but outside too, also Chamber of Commerce. Like we call it belly to belly, that's where 90% of the transactions are done. And there are a lot where people find it from Zillow and online, but 90% of real estate transactions in Denver are facilitated via an in-person meeting. And that's the best way to do it. Because eventually, you go out and meet 50, 100 people and you're telling them about your passion and idea. Someone's going to be like, hey, you have to talk to so-and-so. And so-and-so might be your mentor, or you might talk to them and they're going to say, you got to go talk to Bill, and Bill's going to be the mentor. Like you just got to keep pulling that thread.
Yeah. Ditto on that. I mean, again, work your network. I think that's really where you're going to find the ones that are going to be the most valuable to you, that are going to give you the best advice and no bullshit kind of attitude. And that's what you want. You don't want people to sugarcoat things. I mean, that's, to me, not a good mentor. That's not a good business coach, as if, they're only telling you the good. They need to tell you the bad, and they need to, really help advise areas for growth and learning. And that's the biggest thing, right? I mean, I've been involved in so many businesses now. And while we didn't make them all work, it also, you learn from everything you do. So take the learning and move it on to the next.
Awesome.
So I want to chime in one thing real quick too. I've just seen there's been a few things in the chat about books. Atomic Habits on my bookshelves. At some point I'll read the dang thing. But the main thing is making time to read. So I multitask. When I work out every day, I also read. So right now I'm on book 34 of the year. So I'll be reading 35 books. 34 is about Jack Ma and about Alibaba. But Be Useful, another great book on Schwarzenegger recently read. And then the final book of the year, book 35, is actually about our dear friend Elon Musk from Walter Isaacson. If you've read any of his books from Walter, they're amazing. But I just want to mention, I know, Nick, you just put in some recommendations, but the other thing is you got to grow your mind. And how you grow your mind is to read consistently. But again, you have to make time. And even if it's only 15 to 30 minutes per day, well, guess what? That's 365 days in a year. You will be amazed at the amount of content you can read, because if you're not growing, if you're not focusing on being better, and when I talk about being better, I'm not talking about just being in business, I'm talking about being a better person, health-wise, spirituality-wise, mental health, all these things, then you cannot be successful. Because if you cannot take care of yourself, you cannot take care of your business. So invest the time in reading, make the time to do so.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, there was actually a question in here about recommendations for books and resources. So it sounds like there's a couple there. And then panelists, and if you guys want to drop other recommendations into the chat for everyone when you get a chance, that would be great too. And again, this is recorded, so you can always go back and check it out. I think the last question to end on, and I think it's a good one, and it's about success. We started with challenges. The first question was, biggest challenge and how you overcame it. In reflecting on your entrepreneurship journey, what was your greatest success and how did you get there? How did you achieve it?
All right. So in this situation, the biggest success was seeing our client succeed, which I know it sounds a little bit basic, but the whole point is this. If you do not take care of your clients, you will not have success. And our philosophy is very simple. And that is, we put all our focus on our clients. We want to make sure they have every opportunity for success, because we find when they have success, everything else takes care of itself. And I can say that because we've had 131 consecutive successful launches for our clients. That has brought in tons of opportunity with referrals, with our reputation, and the different things that we have built. So for us, our success are in our clients. And when that takes care of it, everything else takes care of itself.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Nick, Carrie, either of you want to chime in on the biggest success question and how you got there?
I saw Nick turn around, so he's going to wait for me. It's a funny question. Honestly, throwing everything to the wind in the sense of not knowing anything about tourism, being a huge fan of travel, starting a tour company, launching it, having success with a media tour was fine. But when we sold out that first tour, to me, like that smallest thing of just people realizing and you're like, we got it, right? And then it, as that grew, I think just the momentum, it was, not necessarily, we won awards, we won things through the state and whatnot. And those are great, mind you, but it was just the people, someone who would come on a tour with a spouse and they were like, I don't like Walking Dead, I don't like Black Panther, I don't like these movies or TV shows. But I came on this tour and now I'm going to go home and I'm going to watch every season that ever existed. That's what we did it for. That's what our guides did it for. We built a company with 20 tour guides that those were the ones interacting with people. And I would say the biggest success is that those tour guides are still all in a Slack group talking every day, even though the company has been gone for 3 years. So that to me is a success. And we did have one fan actually tattoo our logo on their arm. I thought that was a brave thing to do. However, he got free tours for him and his family for life. And so, you know, I took that as a very, you know, if you build a company where somebody actually wants to put your logo on their body, I took that as a very big success.
Awesome. Thanks, Carrie.
Man, that's a new goal. Just my face on someone's body. Buy a house. Now, Carrie, I didn't mean to leave you hanging there. My cat tried to join in as well, so I was kicking her off. I think very similarly to like it's the dollar figures that I needed to hit to know that like I can do this. That created a lot of stress, and it felt good when I hit it. But it's the stories that I was getting, like my first ever call from someone I didn't know, like someone who had heard about the job that I did from a neighbor, calling me to list their house. Like that was one of my biggest wins that I will never forget. I still keep in touch with them, and they live 6 states away. Like that, I think that was huge. I had a brother call me that I had met in college that saw one of my Instagram posts, and I never post as much as I should. That was just like learning how to be a better agent here at the Home and Garden Show in Denver. And he's like, oh my God, I'm moving to Denver. And we sat down, we spent 3.5 hours talking about their plan and what they wanted to do. And I taught them how to do house hacking and start buying rentals to get started. And I mean, he just turned his first home into his first rental. He's buying his second home. That's going to be his second rental right now. Like the stories, I resonate a lot with what Carrie was saying, because the stories are why I do what I do. It's the coolest part of my job. And it's like, I don't come home and tell my wife like, hey, I made 12K today. Like, that's really great. She's excited, but she gets the check deposit notification. Like I come home and tell her like, Richard left me a really nice review. Can we sit down and, can I read it to you? And Brad said this and sent me to his mom. Like, those are the things that make the business successful. That's what I live for. That's why I wake up every day.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Thanks to all of our panelists. I know we're a minute over here, and thanks to all of the attendees and the great questions. If there were questions that weren't answered, feel free to forward those to me, luke@dsp.org, and I'll get those over to the panelists in hopes that they can answer those for you. So again, if you had a question that was not answered, feel free to forward that to me, and I will do my best to get it answered for you. But with that, thank you all for attending. Thank you so much to Paul, Nick, and Carrie for doing this for us. Really great, you all. It was awesome. And I hope you all have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.